the engine just goes flat and it's missing. One way I always got to go racing, where I normally would not have ever been able to afford to go racing, was to be able to take a ratty old dilapidated car from the past and build it into something amazing. And actually, for me, years ago, vintage racing was a really good environment for it. I think the vintage racing world has changed quite a lot in, shall we say, the last 5 to 10 years, because the cars have gotten elevated to just absurd icon status and the value has gone up and it's become more commercial. But maybe more 10, 15 years ago, vintage racing, I think, was kind of in a more golden age because it hadn't yet become the circus that comes along with the super high values. And there was genuine good racing out there. You know, obviously there's some sportsmen and things out there that aren't as edgy, but you could have some really good racing in cars that were over the top. Super high horsepower, super fast, maybe a little wild and woolly, dangerous, kind of the way we like it, but it was pretty great. And years and years and years ago, my dad and I got a Formula Ford, which is powered by the 1.6 liter Ford engine that was used in everything, kind of like an early Pinto engine or whatnot. Had the little 2-barrel Weber carburetor on it. As a spec series back then. So no aerodynamics. That one actually had a front radiator, but it was very charming. And for that point in my car building and driving and such, it gave me some little nostalgic dreams of like watching movie Grand Prix or something and watch that Smith's chronometric mechanical tack ticking by and, shifting the dog box with no clutch and stuff. That was back in the days of being in Tiffin and, working on cars in a pole barn outside. And, that's when you painted cars outside, and if a bug landed in the paint, you sand it out and wet sand it and buff it, But we did a good job building them. And that was also back in the days before I had scales to proper corner weight a car and really set it up. So we could align it. And I understood the theory back in setting up a car from your roll bars and getting the car balanced and your dampeners and all. But it didn't mean necessarily that we could afford good shocks. They might be like 40-year-old Armstrong shocks or something like that. But we did a really good job preparing the car and building it and making it something worthwhile, and actually got to drive it in a number of races. My dad even autocrossed it with us and had a lot of fun. Going back to those days, didn't even have an enclosed trailer, and I really wanted to go run at Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen is a beautiful track. It's in New York, upstate New York, by the Finger Lakes. You got those beautiful rolling, kind of like ancient mountains or giant hills. And, you can wake up camping up at Watkins Glen up at the top and look out over the valley and you just see a beautiful sea of silver because you're actually above the clouds. It's kind of gorgeous when it fills it in. There's some really good memories I had in the past of being in Watkins Glen on an early morning and driving down the back straightaway for a warm-up, and there's just like a cloud that you just go right underneath. Or the early morning sun coming in like bouncing off a polished aluminum Lotus 11 Le Mans, racing old 50 sports racers. So very romantic, very nostalgic in doing that racing, and wonderful memories I always have. So having the vintage Formula Ford way back then was fun because I remember towing it to Watkins Glen with my old buddy, college engineering buddy, Chris, and we just camped out, had a great time, and ran it. And the car was good. But it was somewhat funny because couldn't afford extra gear ratios, couldn't afford a second set of tires, couldn't afford new shocks, but it was a decent car. Ran well together, was safe. And I remember one guy who'd been racing forever and preparing them just giving me all kinds of crap because I wasn't prepared with proper gear ratios. And I'm like, you want to buy them for me? I'm like, okay, so the car's topping out a little bit faster on the straightaway, but I'm second fastest in the entire group of every Formula Ford, so what are you getting on my case because I can't afford new gears? It was just kind of that, but just those are the memories, when you're younger and you're building and you're trying to have those great adventures and go somewhere. It was funny because the adventures you get out of doing that, of course, you're driving far away from home and interesting weather and it's raining and there's fog and you're going downtown to the festival and driving the old country roads where they used to race on the street before they built the track, and going through wine country with a big festival and driving the race car with an open face helmet on. There'd be people like out in wine country that sit out, wait for the race cars to go by, and they got a table and they're drinking wine, and when they go by you, they're like saluting you with the wine glasses, which sounds kind of snobby in a way when you say it, but it was just so cool because it's such that romanticized, vintage, pure, no BS race cars and sports cars, and everybody just living life. So, and even in telling the story, it feels kind of like a dream, but I actually got to do it. And I remember the Watkins Glen race, this was the full course where you go down into the toe and heel of the boot rather than the short course they run NASCAR on. So you're going through the back straightaway. You go through the chicane, the bus stop, and you turn and you go right in that long on-camera sweeper that goes then downhill to braking to turn left to go down to the toe of the boot. And I remember under braking, the pavement of Watkins Glen goes like this. And also because we couldn't afford newer shocks and they were the original shocks, the dampening wasn't as good as it should be. And it was creating that undulation, the pavement under braking was creating a degrading oscillation. And all of a sudden the wheels would start going bump, 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 bump like this. Not something you want in a race car. And I literally learned to read the road and the exact undulations of this so that I could just ever so slightly modulate the pedal pressure at the exact same frequency, and I could smooth out the bumps of the degrading oscillation in the chassis, which sounds absolutely horrific. No proper race preparation shop or a real race team would think that's okay, but you gotta understand, I was like just out of college and couldn't afford anything better, and I felt like I overcome something by learning a new skill. Actually, they ended up red flagging the races after hours because I remember going out there and the clouds rolled in. So Watkins Glen is large enough that you could go down the back straightaway of the bus stop and it was fine, and then go to another few corners getting down to the boot and it would be raining there, but dry up there, but overcast. But then when you got around to pit straightaway, you're in a cloud, dense cloud. This was a long time ago, so nobody caused a row, but I couldn't see anything. So you'd be flat out going down pit straightaway, and I could see the car in front of me, and he might have been 20, 30 feet up there, but that's all I could see. So I could see that there was a car up there, vaguely in the fog, and we're going flat out down the straightaway. I'm in my line, and I'm trusting that everybody else is also moving along well because I can't see all the way down. So you see that, and I'm watching the fences come by the post. So you got to memorize where it is to your braking zone and then know where to get on it and trust there's still a road there. But for me, when I was younger, that was kind of the fun adventure of it. And you know, these are the adventures that racing drivers in the golden days of yore throughout Europe and all, these were the kind of crazy adventures you have in the stories you tell. So it was kind of fun and romanticized in that way. And then of course you got through there and then it was raining in that part. So it was wet. And that was an exciting challenge. But it's interesting because it was actually that race that led to other stories and parts of my life. But I kind of had a moment where I was having all the fun in the world, but sometimes as you just get into the flow of doing an athletic thing where you're just unconsciously doing it, like a subtle thought can roll in your head, you know? And I remember thinking, I was coming up the, I don't know, I forget what you call it, but the flat out squiggles that go up over the entrance bridge to Watkins Glen before the back straightaway. And I remember thinking to myself, what am I doing here? You know, I loved what I was doing as a great adventure, but I was hundreds of miles away from home. We're not competing for anything in particular. And it just felt like racing is great, but it should mean something more. And it was actually interesting because it was that moment and that thought at Watkins Glen that frankly later led to me creating Genius Garage, because I found a way to make something that I love, that I saw a tremendous amount of value for engineering and careers and things, and make it matter for young people in a way that I could have helped so much my career when I was younger and helping kickstart that. So that was neat that came of it. But I think the best story from that Formula Ford actually came from racing in Mid-Ohio that year. And this was more than 10 years ago. This is when I think vintage racing was a little more pure before it came commercialized. And Mid-Ohio is my home track, home race. And as a kid, I always grew up going with my dad or family or friends to Mid-Ohio. And that was the most fun thing in the world because you go in a sports car, you have a beautiful drive to the country, you hang out with friends, you see different races, and that was my jam. That's what life's all about. Some of my friends from my hometown were actually going to come and hang out and watch. So it was fun because the first time friends were going to actually come and spectate. So you want to do well, and it just makes it feel even better and more exciting. And I remember doing the warm-up for the race on Saturday. They typically have a race on Saturday and then one on Sunday. So we'll go for the warm-up, doing the warm-up lap and all ready to go. And as I start to get on it, coming to pit straightaway, when I see the green flag, the engine just goes flat and it's missing. I'm like, what? Come on. I'm like working it. I'm overweight in the marbles. Everybody's going by. I'm like, come on, And I'm just dying inside. Like, what? Why? What happened? That we actually prepared the car very well. It ran well. It shifted well just because we couldn't afford new shocks or other gears. It was actually a good car. And, qualified well. Back at Watkins Glen, I ended up finishing, I think, second in the group. maybe third at the worst. And that was actually with me spinning the end of the boot, a real thing in the rain, because I'm like, oh no, I'm sideways. This is cool. I can hold this. And I'm like, wait, no, this isn't a go-kart. I can't actually hold this. So I'm at Mid-Ohio. It's missing terribly. The whole field goes by and everybody's there at the S's, at the end of the back straightaway. That's where everybody goes to watch the racing. You get the big passing, and it's real exciting to see all the race cars at top speed just explode from around the corner, under braking, you know, cackling and firing, everybody coming to rip around. It's so much fun. That's the Mid-Ohio culture. So here's all my friends that came to watch. Here goes the field, ripping through formula cars, everything like that. And a moment later, here comes Casey, like this. And I'm trying to, we didn't have a radio. I'm trying to motion. I'm like, go back to the pits. We got to fix this stupid thing. And I get back there. I remember my one buddy, Keith, I used to ride BMX bikes and stuff with as a kid. He was like, yeah, man, we came here. It's a beautiful day. We came. We're ready to see you race and see all the cars rip by. And that was awesome. And then a minute later, we see you come by. And I looked at my buddy. I went, I think I could do that. You know, I was like, oh man, come on, man. You're busting my balls. Adversity's fun to overcome in a way. You know, you want, like in that circumstance, I just wanted the opportunity to, you qualify where you qualify and you have an amazing race, dice it up, hopefully finish as best as you can. And at that point, it's really the sportsman racing, because sometimes there would be cars where you reasonably can't finish better than X. So I always enjoyed it because it allowed me as a driver to take whatever it is I have, tune it the best I can. It's not perfect, but can I will this car beyond where it really reasonably should finish?
Premier Financial Services has been a sponsor of the VinWiki YouTube channel for the last 4 years, and we love them for that, but we also love their Simple Lease. It's one of the most powerful tools in the world of exotic car financing. It allows you to minimize your payment, minimize your down payment, have the flexibility to move in and out of cars, and take all of the advantages that are available to a leasing structure. So check them out at the link in the description below. We appreciate their continued support of VinWiki, and since you heard about them last year on the channel, they were actually acquired by First Financial Bank USA. And what does that mean for you? It means they're now larger than any of the other exotic car banks you may have heard of. They can move faster, buy more deals, and give you even better customer service. So thank them for their continued support of VinWiki and use them as your tool to buy your dream car soon.